Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and we have a very special guest with us today. My old friend, Rick Walker, is with us. Rick has a super diverse background. He scaled a business that had 400 employees, been really an entrepreneur all his life. He scaled a nonprofit. He ran for Congress. He's now in the real estate business, and he's written a book. I want to get the book right. I'm going to show it for the YouTube people. 9 steps to build a life of meaning. And we'll get into some of those steps and a lot more. But Rick, I just want to thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it and look forward to our time together.
We've had a lot of fun together talking over the years. And now we just get to hit record and have our friends listen in. So this is going to be a lot of fun, I hope, for both of us and for the listener. But Rick, we always try to start with just kind of where you grew up, what was the family like, just set the context for us, for Rick as a kid.
Well, so I grew up in the poverty of a 2-bedroom home down in Corpus Christi. My dad's dad, his dad, and his dad, they all drank themselves to death.
Wow.
And so that was really a big part of my childhood, is my father trying to beat back that multi-generational curse. On my mother's side, Italian, Sicilians, very family oriented, just a small group there. And I remember my dad being out of work a good deal while we were growing up. And I never really had met anyone that had been successful. I never really met anyone that was a business owner. But I had the experiences during that upbringing where I came to believe that there are certain things I didn't want in life.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go dumpster diving for Dennett cans in the back of the H-E-B grocery store anymore. I didn't want to struggle.
Very
I didn't want my
specific
wife.
Example.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I didn't want to have my wife work 2 full-time jobs. I didn't want to be out of work. And so I never had a positive vision of what I wanted, because I never met someone that had the marriage, the money,
Right.
the kids, the relationships that I did want. But I did know what I didn't want. And I used that negative vision of what I didn't want to help launch me into the business path.
Yeah. And so did you start doing entrepreneurial stuff from a young age? What did that look like?
Oh yeah. So little things like I would get paid $20 I think a month allowance to do the yard.
Yeah.
And I would pay my best friend $10 to do it for me. And so I would take the spread on that.
Gotcha.
I tell the story in the book where when my dad and I were both out of work, where we would go around to yard sales, and we would ask if they have any old jewelry, any old broken watches. And they never brought them out, but almost everyone did have old broken watches. They were handed down, they inherited, and they just never remember about it. And so we would take those watches that were most often just need a little bit of cleaning, and we would take them a few streets down, and we'd sell them sometimes for 5 or 10 times more than we purchased them.
Wow.
And so I began to learn the business of arbitrage through that process. And that was very helpful. It's been very helpful, not only financially, but also philosophically for me over the years.
I mean, talk about that a little bit, because I think it seems like just about everybody we have on the podcast that got into some entrepreneurial venture, even if it took them a while later in life, there were some of these little things, and like a lot of business is just basic math, but you talked about some principles. So maybe what were some of those principles that you learned early that continue to help?
So one, for instance, let me just give you a real world concrete example.
Yeah.
We would go to the beach, my friend and I, during the summers, and we would buy a case of bottled water and a bag of ice on the way out there, and we'd sell it for 10 times more on the blazing beach. We'd arbitrage the value of that water. As I learned more about business, and I started my first real estate management firm when I was in college, I think I was 19 or 20. I started a business in Corpus Christi one summer and was going to school in Oklahoma City. Now, if you know anything about geography, that's 9 hours apart.
Yeah.
So I would go to school Monday through Thursday in Oklahoma City. I would drive 9 hours back to Corpus Christi, see
Oh,
clients on Fridays, train staff on Saturdays, and drive back on Sundays. I did that every week for 18 months, for a year and a
wow.
half, 18 hours a week for 18 months. And that, it was just something that I saw my dad do. He occasionally get jobs doing, long haul driving to go pick up samples or shipments or whatever it
Okay.
might be. And like, you just sit, put your butt in the seat and you just do it. And so that was a lesson. But what I learned through the real estate management business is that I could provide a service for individuals that they needed at a more affordable price than they could generally get, but also give them an opportunity to, I guess, get more out of it while they're increasing the value of their assets. And so that helped show me the principles. Now I'd still never met Jeff. I grew that first business from 0 to 400 W-2
Yeah.
employees by the time I was 26. By the time I was 26, I had still never met anyone else that had 400 employees like I did.
Right.
I was running this thing out of a Starbucks on a laptop, one of those big old thick, not the sexy kind of laptops, Jeff, not the kind that you kids have. Like I'm talking about the old clunky ones
Yeah.
with a transformer and stuff. And
Drop it on
so
it on your foot, it hurts. Yeah.
yeah, but I didn't have anyone to give me advice. I didn't
Right.
know anyone at that time, and so you just kind of figure stuff out.
I mean, what led you to the real estate business in the first place? I mean, you kind of threw that out that you're doing this during college. I mean, most college students aren't starting a business, let alone doing this commute. So it kind of explains a little bit with your dad kind of doing the long haul driving that maybe that was normalized for you a little bit. But I mean, that's just a lot of time. But on top of that, real estate in college, like, was it just out of pure necessity? Where'd you kind of pick up on the real estate business piece?
Yeah, so I wasn't actually buying the real estate. I was just managing for the people that
You
owned real estate.
managing.
So
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so what I did when I was in high school, actually, I was 14, 15, 16 years old in high school, writing multi-million dollar proposals for the guy that my dad worked for at that time, who owned a base operations contracting firm. So they would go and manage military bases for the federal
Okay.
government. And they would give them a firm flat, like firm fixed fee contract. So if a toilet went out, you replaced it, HVAC unit,
Right.
you replaced it, everything for hundreds of buildings, guaranteed for 5 years, flat fee for 5 years. And so I would write those proposals to help them get those contracts. And I started thinking when I was in college, like I could probably do that for the commercial space.
Right.
And so I just started small. I would go door to door. Uh, it started off as small schools, churches, that sort of thing, and eventually got into be hospital systems that and we were able to do some larger things. But it was mainly in the single tenant, and then we eventually got in the federal government space when the guy that my dad used to work for actually went out of business, and I felt comfortable to go and compete in that space because I didn't want to compete against him. And I was actually able to hire my dad away from him to come and help me. So my dad and I worked together for about maybe 15 years, 10, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now, where were you going to school? Oklahoma City. What was your
Southern Nazarene
degree?
University. Yeah, Southern Nazarene University. My folks couldn't afford it, but we grew up
Right.
Nazarene, and my mom went to the bank and took a loan out to pay the first month's payment. And she
Wow.
sent that first month's payment that she borrowed and then told me after the fact that where I was going. She didn't know how she was going to borrow the second months or the third months or any of the future years. She just sent me, and so I felt obligated to go. I wasn't planning on going to any school, maybe the local community college. And so obviously that was a big godsend because that's where I met my wife Shannon. That's where I got everything out of college.
Okay. But clearly, one of the things I love about your book is you're really transparent about you've had some pretty big highs and lows, and I think most people do. I think this sort of entrepreneurial road that you've chosen, and most of the people listening to this probably, it just lends itself probably to higher highs and lower lows.
Oh, yeah.
And I know we could do the whole length of this podcast probably on just doing those, and maybe we should. But how start taking us through this arc. So we're kind of getting the picture that it's kind of on you. You got this kickstart. You had some experience doing these things. That sort of makes sense. Okay, well, why can't I do that in another space? Grow this
Yes.
thing. I got 400 people at 26. That's a lot going on. You got married. Was it right out of college?
Yeah, yeah. I think we got married. I was 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we started picking up there 23,
Yeah.
26, started expanding in different cities. And someone gave me this little book called The Treasure Principle by Randy Alcorn,
Great book. Randy
and it hit
Alcorn.
me hard. It hit me hard.
So good.
And so Shannon and I, we began giving significant portions of our income away, many years well in excess of 50%. And it got us on different boards and gave us different opportunities, right? Because we're making that much, but we're given half of it. These people are making that much and they're given a small part, so we end up in
Right.
the same rooms. And so
Right.
and so as the young person is sort of still in the game, I'm in a room, maybe I'm 30 years old, I'm in a room where everyone else is 70 plus, and they want me to take charge of things. They want
Yeah,
me
they're
to
so
to
excited to have the young
yeah.
person in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was interesting. So I was able to take some of the business skills I learned and apply it to nonprofits. I scaled a nonprofit missions organization from 800 staff to 2,300 across 53 countries. At one point, I served as chairman on a seminary board where we did some really cool stuff in some very difficult places in the Middle East. We planted nearly 15,000 churches while I was on one of the boards. And then I helped recruit around 5 billion in capital investment for the greater Houston area over a period of time in I think my early 30s. And so a lot of things were clicking around that time. I guess I was just in the flow, and I had a little more optimism than I probably should have. And I thought, well, let me see what else I can do. And so in my late 30s, I decided that I was going to run for Congress. Now, a few weeks beforehand, Hurricane Harvey hit and it flooded our house. So my wife and I and our kids were living up on the second floor. The house is completely destroyed on the first floor. You know how it is.
Wow.
And the congressman announced his retirement. I decided I'm going to run for Congress. Long story short,
Well, the house is
um,
flooded. Yeah.
while the house is flooded. Yeah, the
Right.
wife's pretty pumped by that. And long story short, I'm going around campaigning and talking about myself, 24/7, which is
Right.
something I wasn't really accustomed to doing.
Right.
But I soon got accustomed to that because I was doing it every day, all day long, and I really wasn't spending the time I needed, the emphasis I needed on my wife, on my spiritual development, on my kids,
Mm.
and it was a time I really got off track. And so when the election night came, I had been polling one and two the entire time as a 9-person race, and I got a text message from my mom of a screenshot from NBC National News with my picture on it, quantifying how badly I lost. And if you really want a gut punch, that's a gut punch. It doesn't get more public, Jeff, than your picture
Right.
on
Right.
NBC
Right. And
National News,
right.
and then your own mother sending that to you. But also did something important because I think a lot of us business guys, whenever we take a loss, only generally the accountant and maybe our wife
So
know
true.
about it.
It's pretty
They don't,
private generally.
right? Yeah, it's private. It's private.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when you take a loss in public like that, and that was my first big public L. I mean, it was a clear loss. Everyone knew it, and I had to own up to it. That was really a reset. And so I had a series of other unfortunate events that occurred after that folks can read about in the book. But in the long of it, on the short of it, I realized that life is essentially just a string of failures with the occasional moment of perfection.
Mm.
Like for some of us, it's just a string of failures after one another. But that one moment of perfection, that one good deed, that one divine intervention is the one thing that can redeem everything else that came before it. And so I didn't realize that until I went through that journey.
Oh man. And so many lessons. And I really think you know, we had lunch a few weeks ago and we were talking about the book, 9 Steps to Build a Life of Meaning, and I was kind of asking you who it was for. Why don't you kind of tell the audience, like, who's the avatar in your brain that this book is for?
Yeah, there is a subset of Western men that are 25 to 45 years old right now, who are what in the midst of what John Vervaeke calls a meaning crisis. This is a meaning crisis where these are men that are significantly underperforming in key areas of life. Maybe it be effort or love or compassion. A lot of these individuals maybe just they don't have anything in their life. Maybe these are folks that go to work 8 to 5, but they're playing video games the rest of the time. No marriage, no hope for kids,
Hmm.
and there's not even an attempt to do that. So they come across a wide swath of I guess activity levels. I surveyed a group of 35 folks that are involved in this age bracket, and I just asked them the question: what percentage of men in the West are underperforming on their responsibilities and their possibilities?
Yeah.
And out of the 35 individuals, 90% of those individuals said that 75% or more of the young men between 25 and 45 that they know they interact with are underperforming significantly in one or more areas like that. And so I felt called, Jeff, to not reach out to the type of people, the highly successful people that I normally deal with in my business and in these nonprofit activities. I felt called to reach out to that next generation of young men that's trying to get their stuff together. And my offer is this, by the way. I just told you, just a very brief summary of the things that I've done, and then I've experienced the tragedies and successes. But I think that I've got some lessons, some principles that I've learned over time. Um, and I know that a lot of the fathers, the grandfathers, have tried to speak wisdom into these young men to try to encourage them, try to bring them back, and it probably hasn't worked. Um, and the offer is this: like, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot. Like I've done some stuff. Maybe some of the stuff that I've done it will rub off on them. Maybe I can speak a little bit clearer. And I tell some crazy stories in the book that are just unimaginable for most folks, that I think allow these individuals that are 25 to 45 to see that there's a way to live an exciting life, a godly life, and a life of relevance all together. And so that's my hope to do. I want to, I think these young men, and I'll leave it here. I think these young men were told all along by the parents, by the grandparents, by the teachers, that they had this amazing potential,
Mm.
that when they got out of MBA school, they'd be running the companies immediately, that they would never have any issues finding a job. They would always be able to find love. All these sorts of lies from their perspective were bound up in this potential. Now, there's nothing more that these young men want than for that potential to be realized, to be concretized. Um, and so my offer is this: I want to rip away the comfort enslaving that potential.
Hmm.
I think it's the comfort that's the primary thing that's enslaving that potential. That's meant to unlock that next generation of young men. That's what did it for me. That's what I've seen done for thousands of men that I've interacted over the last couple of years in the space, and that's what I hope to do through this book.
And so, normally on this podcast, we're normally kind of telling a story, but what's so interesting is having written this book, you've really had to go back and kind of think about, these sort of mile markers in your life where there's turning points. And I think that's something that is kind of gift that maybe you've given yourself, but I think you're giving the world is to kind of go back and analyze those points. What were those lessons? Just like we were talking about, like the early entrepreneurial things, lessons from that. So, do you mind maybe just kind of walk us through a few of those pivotal times in your life, and maybe what are those principles that you've learned that you'd love for other people to, glean from it as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. First one that's most obvious for this audience. I remember coming home after my second year of college, actually after my freshman year of college, and going back to the same job that I had before, which was doing telemarketing. So I sat in a big telemarketing call center, And I went through some training that summer, and I went to go sit down at the computer, had my headset on like I have now, and something just prompted me. I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or what it was, but I heard a voice that said, "Rick, you don't need this." And so, and I was excellent at the last
I bet,
summer. I
yeah.
did really, really good. But for some reason, I heard that, and I just stood up. I took my headphones off, and the call center manager was right there. And I said, "Look, I don't need this. I'm out." I started the first business the next day and
Wow.
never looked back. And then there are two men, I would say, that because I took the initiative, that those chance meetings really changed the trajectory of who I would meet and who I would become. The first one was a trumpet instructor who happened to be a multi-millionaire in college. That he didn't own a business. He was just sort of an investor, and he mentored me after college for a time. And then I was in board meetings in Kansas City, and I got fogged in. And across from me at the United Lounge, I see this family, maybe two generations or three generations of family sitting there, and I initiate this conversation with the patriarch of the family, and I find out that we're both involved in media missions, and it ends up being Kyle Van,
Mm.
and that's probably been 20 years ago. And Kyle was really poured into my life. I mentioned it. I talk about him a lot in the book, but he was mentored a lot by Charles Koch.
Yes.
And and Charles Koch has been probably one of the foremost mentors of great business leaders. I mean, you look at the number of people that come out of Wichita
It's true.
that are like ruling the world right now. It's
That
Charles
city is
Koch.
punching above its weight in
That's right.
leadership. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So like I would have met you, Jeff, without Kyle Van. I would have met
yeah.
anyone that I know in our circles without Kyle. And it's just because I decided I was going to initiate. And I don't tend to do that, but I decided I was initiate. So that kind of gets me to wonder, like, how much more should I be initiating?
Yes. And don't you think the older you get, I think when you're younger, I'll say it for myself. I talk about this a lot. Um, I didn't initiate asking for mentors. Some of it was, well, a lot of it was my own insecurity. I think, like, I'm not sure I had, uh, I'm not, I'm not sure I had thick enough skin to take the criticism that was probably valid, that somewhere in my soul I knew was valid, and I maybe wasn't willing to make the change. That might have been. I know a lot of it was that. But I think another one is that I thought they wouldn't be interested. They're too busy, this sort of thing. But the older you get, don't you feel like that if somebody came up to you, even after writing this book, and really wanted you to, you know what I mean, to help them, I mean, if it's genuine coming from the right place, I think these people who you think wouldn't have time, younger men, uh, would be willing to make some for you. What's your idea about mentorship in that way?
Yeah. So I can say that since I released the book back in July, I've been doing one or two sort of private video calls a week with different men every
Wow.
single week that have reached out, had issues with different things, and I always give them homework. Like, if you
Right.
want a second
Yeah.
meeting, this is your homework.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's just sort of a one shot
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they can
Sure.
work it out on their own. But yeah, mentoring is very, very important, right? The only way to get mastery is from a master.
Mm.
It's got to cascade down from somewhere. And if you're not looking up, you're never going to catch that which is above you. Only get that which is coming from the hells beneath you. And so we've got to figure out where we're going to get the expertise, from whom we will
So
receive
true.
mastery.
So true. So initiating some of that would be one. What are some other key moments along the way that have been helpful?
Yeah, I remember being chairman of this large organization, again, 50 plus countries, 2,300 staff. I'd been there for a decade, scaling it, and we found some discrepancies, I'll just say,
Yeah.
in the finances, and I came out of pocket and hired three different CPA firms to look at them. They're all saying, "Yeah, that's an issue. That's an issue. That's an issue." I bring it to the governance committee. They're saying that's an issue. They bring it to the board, and the board says, "No, we're not going to do anything about it."
Oof.
And so I had the decision, Jeff, to to put up a fight and to walk away from a decade of my work, tear down my own work, right? I'd financially
Yeah.
contributed, I'd contributed with my time, or I could just walk away. And I chose to walk away because the more I reflected, Jeff, it's that we too frequently make enemies of the wrong people, of the wrong things. If an enemy and a counterparty are two very different things. A counterparty is someone that poses a threat that can be flipped into an opportunity. That's a counterparty. I'm going to negotiate with you. We may find a win-win. You may win. I may win. But there's going to be a game after this. There's opportunity for another conversation, another negotiation. There's some playfulness there. There's an opportunity to be had, perhaps in the future. But an enemy, which these people were not an enemy that I realized, and luckily I didn't destroy the organization that I was leading. They were not an enemy because they had opportunity to grow. I mean, they were already doing tons of ministry, planning lots and lots of churches, and it was just sort of a bookkeeping thing. So we had the attorneys handle it, and I don't know what happened after that because it's frankly none of my business. But I think that's important. So counterparty, enemy. Counterparties are threats that contain opportunities. Enemies are mere threats with no opportunity embedded. You destroy enemies, you work and you negotiate, and you have compassion on counterparties. Most of the time, the enemies are sort of an evil that's manifest in somebody. It's an ideology. It's a nature. It's a proclivity to lie. It's a nature to deceive. It may be fentanyl crisis. It may be action related types of orientations that have to be destroyed. But you don't destroy the people there. These are just mere threats that don't have any upside. And I think that's one key element where I worked for a decade to build this. Not that it was just me; it was the whole team.
Yeah.
But most of those people were there because I recruited and brought them there. And then just to walk away, just to kind of just suck it up and walk away. And I think I grew up a lot from that. I think I grew a lot from that, and I've tried to have a little more grace out of that.
Well, I know that one of the things in the book that the very first chapter is, choose a worthy enemy. And I think, am I reading too much into it to say the key word there might be worthy?
Yeah,
Don't die on a hill that's not worthy, but pick
that's
something
right.
that, kind of be discerning about what the enemy is and make sure you're sort of majoring in the majors, not a minor, how would you talk about that issue of choosing one worthy enemy? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so the majority of the books that are written into the meaning crisis, the relevancy space, the leadership space, self-development space, targeting men that are 25 to 45 are going to come at them like a business person. Set your goal, set your mission statement, build your objectives, your tactics, and build up to that and put your strategy in place.
Right.
But the problem is this generation, they don't have a positive vision of what they want. Like I was when I was growing up, I only had a negative vision of what I didn't want because I
Right.
never saw something that I didn't want. And so we start off asking them to build dreams and they just fabricate stuff. And that's why they don't have any passion. They don't know what they want. And they know what they were promised, but they don't know what they want. And so what I discovered, and I read about 1,000 books, Jeff, to be able to be
Wow.
prepared to write this one book. And I've done some stuff as well that where I learned some lessons just through my own mistakes and met a lot of really smart people. But one of the overwhelming meta ideas was that if the purpose of the light is to invade the darkness, so too the purpose of a good man is to invade the evil that he sees around him. That we're called to tackle the inverse evil manifestation that we see around us. And so I ask young men to look around. I walk them through this process. Find one thing that breaks your heart, because
Yes.
the academics are going to tell you set a goal, and I'm like, the academics, they don't know what they're talking about. Most of them are broke. They're on their third wives, and they're selling 38 books a year.
Right.
Um, they don't like that's not the life you want. Why are you taking advice from these guys? Like,
Great point.
you know, let me show you a story. Let me tell you a story. And then let me walk you out of this the opposite way. Find the thing that breaks your heart, and let's cobble together the competency and go attack that. And once we can cobble together some competency, we can learn how to build teams, build capacity, be able to set objectives that are in the negative, knowing what I do not want to exist. I don't want to go digging for cans in the grocery dumpster.
Yeah.
Then I can have an idea about what I don't want. And we learn through that process. These young men can learn through that process from a doer, not from a pontificator. And getting them out of that first step, that step of choosing one worthy enemy and figuring out a battle plan to go against that enemy. It may be the fentanyl in the public schools, maybe the wokest ideologies in our Sunday schools. It may be the alcoholism that's been pervasive and destroyed their families for decades. There's some manifest evil that breaks your heart. Let's go attack it. And we're going to use that as a training ground because we got to get these guys moving. They haven't moved yet. We got to get them moving. We got to get them to take some hits. And they're more willing to take some hits from things that break their heart than the things that they're totally, they don't really care about.
Find a cause, really a worthy cause. I really like that. As opposed to, I want to start the next Coca-Cola. Oh, okay. I mean, where do I start? And is it even get me up in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay, so like a cause, and you talk about internal and external issues. What do you mean by those? How do you attack what are internal issues as you define them and external issues?
I'm trying to rack my brain about what part of the book that might be from.
Well, it's just
I
you're talking about pick a master and trust revelation, requires sacrifice and
Yeah,
that's
okay, yeah. So the idea that your competency plus your integrity become your identity. That's sort of a
there you go.
formula that we get to where we've got to understand, how are we going to become the type of person that we desire to become?
Exactly.
How are we going to build a relevant life? Now, the key to relevance, and I'm going to get back to the internal and external dimensions here. The key to relevance is you got to understand what relevance is and what wisdom is, because you want to have a wise relevance, not an unwise, fame-driven relevance. And so I did a lot of thinking on this, a lot of reading on this, Jeff, and I believe that wisdom is this: that the wisest mind looks into the most distant future for the most valued reward that I can purchase with the currency of the present.
Yes.
Let
A
me repeat that. The
long-term
wise,
view
yes,
and understanding, the kind of the power of compounding.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. The longest possible future.
Time frame.
Yeah. The wise mind looks in the most distant future for the most valued reward, so the largest possible reward that I can purchase with the currency of the present. So you got to sacrifice your present, whatever you got, your
Great
time, your
point.
effort, your money, in
And
order to
that's not
reach
what the
that.
world tells us to do. Enjoy the present.
Absolutely not.
Sacrifice is
Yeah,
not really a word our culture is big on. That's not a
that's
very
right. That's right.
popular word.
Yeah. So in your business very better than I do, that the man who's just looking for next week's paycheck is probably not the wisest of men in the long term. If he's always looking for next week's paycheck, the man who's looking for the raise he's going to get 5 years is a little bit wiser. The man who's looking for retirement in 50 years is still wiser still. But the man who's trying to put together the college program for his grandkids and his great grandkids, that's the man that has some thought. So as we push out the future and we're making decisions that benefit the more distant futures and higher rewards, we begin to make wiser and wiser decisions. And I walk the young men through that process, and we tie that to the idea that competency plus integrity become your identity. That the competency is the horizontal nature. It's the horizontal nature of how we deal with each other, our negotiation skills, our financial management skills, our skills at marketing. And our integrity is how we handle the vertical dimension, our relationship with God, our morality, our relationship with hell, how these things interact. And we put those two things together, it becomes us. Like, it's not just a symbol
Yeah.
of what we are, not just our identity, it is us. That's all that you have to offer. And so we got to put those two things together, knowing what real wisdom is. And if we can put those two things together, we can really do something with our lives.
Well, what I like about that horizontal and the vertical is, I mean, there's nothing more fundamental about what the Bible's about. It's like, what's the most basic instruction God gives us is like, love God with all your heart, all your might, your entire mind, and then love each other. Okay, so like get the vertical right, and then go behave that way. And you're just kind of putting some flesh on that, right? To get your mindset right. A lot of this is just it's really like a mindset. I think you're kind of blowing up this sort of artificial stuff the world is feeding people, and they don't know what to do with it. And you're kind of bringing a deeper mindset to this.
Yes.
Really, that's really makes a lot of sense. When everybody gets a trophy and all you got to do is set a goal, and they're like, what's the point? Digging deeper into that. Can you talk a little more about overcoming the obstacles as they come? Because I think there's also this general belief in people in my generation, oh, they just sort of they want to be the boss right away, and at the first sign of struggle, they give up and switch jobs or something like that. I mean, how do you talk about the importance? You talked a little about sacrifice and but pain and all. How does that play into this?
So pain that you select will build you. The pain that you don't select, it may tear you down. And so we've got to be very
Hmm.
selective that we embrace the pain that we wish to have. And it looks a lot like generosity sometimes. Um, Lewis said that nothing that you've not given away will ever really be yours. Nothing that you've not given away will ever really be yours. In the Tao Te Ching, I think 75, it says that he who tries to grasp his life is just to lose it. Christ says something almost identical. He who tries
Yeah.
to save his life will lose it, but he who loses himself for my sake and for the kingdom's sake, he will find it. We see these common threads throughout, the religions and the philosophy because they're true. They're sort of meta truths that guide us. And this is really where I begin the conversation with the young men. The first seven of the nine steps are purely or almost purely on a philosophical conversational level that
Yeah.
don't deal with Christianity. Now, the last two we're gonna hit it hard, and it's an apologetic approach to that, but we use the other seven steps to build up to it. But we've got to realize that the only way to keep what we to keep what we think we need to keep is by giving it away.
Right. The
It's like one of the
irony. It's
biggest.
it's
It's
upside
the,
down from the way the world thinks. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. But if you think about it, like look at agriculture, and even Christ said this, that if a farmer wants a tree to shade him and give him fruit, he's got to bury the seed in the ground. He has to give it
Oh,
away.
it's such a good
Um,
example.
if I'm an investor and I've already had my liquidity event, as you guys use it in the biz,
Yep.
um, I'm going to lose all my money to inflation if I don't reinvest that with entrepreneurs.
Right.
I literally have to give my money to an entrepreneur who can invest it and make greater than interest,
Right.
greater than inflation on it, or it will get eaten up by inflation over time. You literally have to give your money away to keep it. You literally have to give a seed away in order to keep it. You literally have to give your life away if you ever wish to have be a person worth loving. And this is where it all comes around, that there's these meta themes that are, yeah, they're codified in scripture, yeah, they're codified sometimes in law, yeah, they're codified in finance, but they pervade all of these different domains because they're like ultimate truths. They're capital
Yeah.
T truths. Lewis would call it the Tao. It's the thing that overarches all the world religions, that binds them all together. They're just universal truths.
Yeah. It's just oh man, there's so much there. Like I was just writing as you were talking, like stewardship requires action,
Yes.
right? You want a life of meaning, as you put on the book title. Um, you know, it just requires action, sacrifice, all these things. Like these are words that, action uh there you will make mistakes, by the way, when you're taking action, as you and I have certainly
Oh
written
yeah.
books about all our mistakes,
Oh
so they're
yeah.
out there. Um but they sort of build your character. You can't be afraid of those things, and the pain. I like this, like choosing your pain. Like one of the things you're saying by that is like it's going to happen. Pain is inevitable. A life of avoiding pain is not a life you want to live. Sort of embracing the action and the setbacks and the pain as all part of this larger, achieving this cause. That's
Yes.
You got to get out, man, and do it. And life is actually that. In serving other people, then you get like all of these things that really Jesus taught at the end of the day and exemplified.
Yeah.
And then he's always got us. Like we're gonna eat, we're gonna have clothes, we're gonna be okay. But the adventure is actually in the doing of blessing other things. How would you kind of wrap it? Those last two chapters are sort of the conclusion. What's the conclusion?
One of the promises in scripture is that you shall with your eyes see redemption and see justice.
Hmm?
Um, like my actual eyeballs will see that.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to happen, but it seems to be true. And so if my eyes can be the nature, could be the method by which I am redeemed and made whole, and my belief in justice is restored, then maybe it's possible for us to experience a little bit of that, here. I think about the business owners here. I think probably a lot of the guys like me. I'm 46, and so I'm just outside of that 25 to 45
That's
year old
right.
bracket. Where I'm able to look back and reflect and speak to these guys. But we all make the same mistakes. We worship our work, then
Yes.
we work on our play, then we play at our worship.
Mm.
We get it all. We get it all wrong. We get it all wrong. We worship our work, then we work on our play, and then we play at our worship. And I think that we've got to get those things realigned,
Ooh, man.
um, because our work is obviously meant to be worship. And you're not really working unless you're worshiping while you're doing it. You're not really worshiping unless you're also working. You're The Sabbath must invade the other 6 days.
Yes.
That's the key, and we've got to get that spot on and understand that we're not. It's an eternal Sabbath in a way, but it's also a realignment and a reintegration of the whole man, the man that not only works but also the man that worships and also plays. We got to get all those things integrated, and so yeah, that's just final thought on that for the
No,
business owner crowd here.
love that. And so as we kind of wrap up, um, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, this is great. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to get going. What's something they can do tomorrow before the book arrives from Amazon or wherever they get it, uh, that they can do tomorrow to kind of start moving in the right direction, even if it's tiny? What's one little
Yeah.
action they can take?
So there are only three things that matter in life. These are the only three things. The relevance of your life will come down to three things. Number one is the quality of the books that you read.
Hmm.
Number two is the quality of the quiet time in which you inhabit. And number three is the quality around your dinner table.
Yeah.
Those are the only three things that really matter in the long run. Obviously, I can put a Jesus label on all three of those things.
Yeah.
But I think trying to get your quiet time together may be the missing piece, because I think there's a lot of gals, a lot of guys that are picking up their Bibles, reading a few verses. I'm generally reading. Some days I'll read 3 hours and I'll spend half that time in the scripture, and the other half time I'll read other stuff. But I've got to learn. I've got to grow. And why am I reading all this derivative work when like
Yeah.
if I read Shakespeare, I got to realize I'm just reading the Old Testament.
Right.
When I read Dante, I'm just reading the New Testament, and the Old Testament. Like why am I going to reading these frivolous things when I can go read the source text, the master source text?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. So silence is probably number one. Is let's
Wow.
fix our silence.
Yeah, get some quiet time and maybe do some listening in that quiet
Yeah,
time to what God might have to
yeah.
say. Ask him a question and sit there, learn to listen. I'm still working on that. Uh, well, this has been so great. Of course, the book, Nine Steps to Build a Life of Meaning, go pick it up. Where else can they find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on X. Website is just rickwalker.com. I do a free bi-weekly leadership newsletter, and that's sort of a thing that fits piecemeal in with the book. And so it's a 3-2-1 format. Three what I call bangers, so three great quotes,
Yeah.
two questions that are reflective, and then one like big idea, or it'll be a video that I've done this week.
Well, Rick, thanks for all that. Thanks for sharing your story and your ideas today. with our audience. And thank you for your friendship. Thanks again for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Hey, and thanks everybody for tuning in to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, share it with a friend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.